What's going on, Packer fans? Ian Ewing here with another episode of Titletown Talk, and boy, am I excited for this one. Oh, I thought I was excited for the one last time. This one is the most exciting episode I've ever recorded. I know probably like 4 of you will listen to this before the draft on night 2, but I'm hoping somebody will at some point. Our Green Bay Packers finally did it, guys. They did the unthinkable, the thing they never did for Aaron Rodgers his entire tenure. They drafted a wide receiver in the first round. Yes. This is not April 1st. This isn't April Fool's, guys. It really happened. In all seriousness, I probably talked about this in the podcast before, but I hate the whole, the Packers have never picked a first-round wide receiver in 20 years. They just don't do it. They don't take receivers in the first round. If you look at every scenario, guys, there's always been somebody that they've liked better, and you can understand the logic there, even if it was Lucas Van Ness over Jackson Smith-Njigba. But we talked about all the examples. I don't need to get into it. They have a very specific skill set they're looking for at receiver. Usually every year, there's between 5 to 10 receivers that even meet their qualifications. This year, there were a lot, and we talked about them on the other episodes. But the first round wide receiver narrative is so annoying and overplayed. Sports media has been driving me nuts for years about this. I hope I'm not alone here. For those of you listening, I hate it. It doesn't matter where you get somebody as long as you get them. I don't really care that, their first round picks under Goody haven't been that good. Obviously it's not great, but they've had 7th rounders hit. Rasheed Walker, Carrington Valentine. There are so many 7th rounders that have hit. Zach Tom is an all-pro. They got him in the 4th round. You go back to Ted Thompson, all the receivers that they picked in the 2nd round. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. Anyway, needless to say, guys, I am absolutely elated over this pick. They went with Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas. All the excitement that I feel, and just so you guys know, maybe you will think this is funny. Maybe some of the people listening will think I'm a psychopath, but I told my wife, Coralie, that if and when they draft Matthew Golden, I'm going to do cartwheels in the kitchen. I'm going to scream out the door so the whole neighbors can hear how excited I am, and I did it. I freaked out. I had a little frog in my throat with happiness, you're about to get before you cry, but you don't because you're a man and you don't cry. Just kidding. I felt really, really, really happy about it. All the excitement that I felt, though, guys, there was an equal level of surprise with it. So as you know, if you listen to any of my draft coverage so far, Matthew Golden's my favorite receiver in the draft. He's probably my favorite player in the draft. He's my favorite player in the draft that was realistically able to be picked by the Packers. Travis Hunter, I'm a huge fan of his. I love Abdul Carter. I like Cam Ward too. My favorite player in the draft is actually Ashton Jeanty. But again, of all the players that were, conceivable for the Packers, Matthew Golden was my favorite. I think he has the highest ceiling of all the receivers in the draft by far. I think he can be a perennial 1,000-yard receiver, 8 TDs every year, 80 to 100 catches every year. I think he has a really, really high ceiling. I think that's closer to his floor than his ceiling. I just think the world of this kid. He was on my list as a possibility, but not likely. If you guys remember from my episode a few days ago, he was certainly an option. First of all, I didn't think he would be there, for one. And 2, I thought they would probably have options that they'd prefer. So just a reminder, he's 6'1", 190. So he's barely big enough. Goody said it in the post-draft press conference. So the Mendoza line is 5'11", which 5'11" is actually what his height is. If you guys look at the combine numbers, every other site you look at says he's 6 foot, he's 5'11". But he said if you're going to be on the smaller side, you need to have an elite trait, and he certainly has that in bunches with his speed. He ran a 4.29 at the combine. He certainly has that. What else do they value? Why else did I think that they might look the other way with him? Production. He had a phenomenal second half of the season last year for Texas, especially in the college football playoffs. He went absolutely batshit. Pardon my French. He literally carried that Texas team through the playoffs last year. So his production was not all through college. I do think some of it was the way he was used. He went to Houston originally, and then he transferred to Texas here in 24. Isaiah Bond was sort of the go-to guy early in the season for Texas. Once he got hurt, they started to go Matthew Golden's way a little bit more. If you look at the tape, people I trust as well that have seen more tape than me all have said it. When they were looking for Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden was still getting open at a pretty high clip. They just weren't throwing it his way. And once they didn't have a choice, once he became a focal point of the offense, he really did end up being really, really good. So production-wise, phenomenal second half of the season against the best competition in the playoffs. So this is kind of a yeah, but, he had one good season, 6 games really. So for a team that values production the way the Packers do, I thought that might not be enough production. They also look for a full athletic testing profile. We talked about that a lot on the episode previously. They don't typically draft guys early, especially who don't have a full RAS card. The shuttle, the broad jump, the bench press, all that stuff, all the full testing. They typically draft people with a full testing profile. The only thing Matthew Golden did was he ran the 40. He had the fastest 40 this entire draft, of course, as we all know. He also had the fastest 10-yard split at 1.48, which is nuts. So he can really fly, and he can get up there quick. Lastly, they like a receiver who can block, and Matthew Golden is not a good blocker yet. If you look at the tape, you hear, again, some of the people who've talked about him that know more than me have said he's a very willing blocker. I don't really look at the blocking stuff on tape. I kind of just fast forward to the stuff where they're actually catching the ball, or they're running routes, I should say. But, overall, I think that if you're a willing blocker, you can be coached to do it better. But again, the obvious reason why I didn't predict him was because I thought he'd be long gone by the time the Packers picked. Right before the draft, I think it was Tuesday, Peter Schrager, who I have a ton of respect for, I think he's probably the most accurate of all the reporters in the NFL. He has some really good sources. He's always ahead on stuff. Now, he's not like an Ian Rappaport guy who, leaks transactions and stuff, but I do believe he has people that gave him their draft board. And he predicted Matthew Golden would go to the Packers. I thought that the Cowboys were going to take him. He was a surefire Cowboy. And the Cowboys went with a guard, Tyler Booker. So, again, that's a surprising pick. There were several of them, but I obviously had him high on my board. Again, my board, I don't want to pretend like I have this really official board or whatever. Like, I don't. I had him in the top 10 for sure. I thought he was my receiver 1. I had him higher than Tet. I had him higher than Ibuka as well. So, needless to say, guys, I'm very, very happy. So, as far as where he was at, he was 19th on the consensus board, 15th on Dane Brugler's board from The Athletic. We'll be talking about him in a second. 14th on Daniel Jeremiah's board, 16th on Mel Kiper's board, and then 24th on the PFF board. So, by all accounts, guys, they got a really good value here. Roughly 10 spots, 8 to 10 spots ahead of where he was sort of predicted to go. Let me read you guys Dane Brugler's sort of outline of his. He's fluid in and out of his breaks. Golden shows a plan as a route runner. I love his ability to break down corners by keeping his eyes, hips, and feet in sync. That coordination also translates to the catch point with his very natural ball skills to track, frame, and finish. Overall, it might bother some teams that he doesn't have better size, but Golden also doesn't have any glaring flaws to his game that would keep him from becoming a productive pro. He can play inside or outside and become the go-to target for an NFL offense. That was Dane Brugler's overall summary of Matthew Golden. My favorite trait of his is not his speed, because I actually don't think he's as fast as his 40 time would say. It's his route running. They had him, Steve Sarkisian, the Texas coach, he is a really, really gifted play designer. They run a pro-style offense. He schemes a lot of them open. Matt LaFleur does the same stuff, right? So he proved over and over again he can run any route that he's asked to run. So I truly believe that, he can run routes at a really high level. He's going to get better at it in the pros. Goody mentioned that his route running had improved from the final game of Texas' season to his pro day. So Goody saw progress on his routes in that short amount of time. So you can imagine that, he has yet to reach even close to his ceiling. Excuse me, guys. He's got really, really strong hands too. There's a play against Arkansas. It's a touchdown catch, and it's insane, guys. He's basically like lunging outward. I wish you guys could see the camera here. He catches it with his hands, drags his feet, and he's getting hit from the back, and he pulls one hand off the ball and just palms it over his head and keeps control of it. The dude has extremely strong hands. He had 6 drops last year per PFF, but from what I could see, they were just kind of concentration drops. He's a hands catcher. He does not catch with his body. Even when he catches closer to his body, it's hands first. He never catches it against his arms. So again, I think I am so in love with this kid. I think he's going to be amazing. Another thing I'll say with this really quick too, guys, there's some dialogue on whether or not he actually runs a 4.29. I don't think he does. He's probably a high 4.3 guy. But if you look at some of the tape too, Quinn Ewers sucks. Texas's quarterback. There are so many plays where he beats the corner deep and Quinn Ewers underthrows him. And it makes Golden have to come back and catch it that way. And obviously, good on him for showing he could do that. But, Jordan Love has had a problem with this too, by the way. I shouldn't sit here and say, when he gets to Jordan Love, he's going to have no problem. Jordan is also sort of bad at overthrowing balls sometimes too. But I do think that, Jordan's going to do a better job of getting him open. As far as how he fits for this season, to me, he's an immediate contributor. I think we're going to see Dontavian Wicks, Jayden Reed, and Matthew Golden take over the receiver room. I think Dobbs is going to be a contributor. I'm not convinced, guys, that they won't trade Romeo Dobbs yet, especially if they pick another receiver. Like if they were to go with Jaden Higgins today or Jalen Royals today. Sorry, guys. If you can tell, my voice is quite hoarse today because of the screaming I did last night, literally. Anyway, sorry, I had to clear my throat. So I do think that those three are going to take over the receiver room. I think Dobbs will probably be, still probably a good red zone threat. I think, he still has a really good rapport with Jordan. But like I said, I'm not going to be surprised one bit if they trade Romeo Dobbs, especially if they were to get a Higgins today or a Royals today, maybe Torrey Horton. Maybe they get one of the day three guys I like Isaac Tesla, maybe Andrew Armstrong, Nick Nash, one of those guys we talked about. I'm not convinced that they're not going to trade him. But this receiver room, guys, just got insanely good. Christian Watson will probably be back in November at the latest, maybe late October at the earliest. When you get Watson and Golden on the field at the same time, put Jayden Reed in the slot, get Luke Musgrave at tight end, that's a level of speed and dynamism we've never had as a Packer fan. Even during the Rodgers era when they had, all five of their receivers, right? They didn't really have this kind of speed. And then you couple that with Marshawn Lloyd at running back, this is a whole new level of speed. God, they still have Mecole Hardman, who might be their seventh receiver this year. It's unprecedented territory we're in when it comes to speed. So, long term, Golden's going to be here for 5 years minimum, probably longer. If everything goes as planned, he's going to be a Packer for life. We still have Reed and Wicks for 2 more seasons. As high as I am on Wicks, I still think he's really going to be good this year. I'm just as high on Jayden Reed. So having those three next season and the season after, assuming Dobbs and Watson move on, that's still a special receiver room. And I still think there's a good chance that they might pick up a receiver today as well. So that kind of leads to the point. It gets kind of thin after 2025. So again, if they're looking at Jayden Higgins today in the second round and TJ Sanders is gone or the edges are gone, I would consider it. If Jalen Royals is there in the third, right? I would consider it. They always draft looking a year or two ahead, and they're going to go where the value is, right? I still think that if they got Will Johnson last night, there's clearly something more medical with Will Johnson that's causing him to fall. If they got Will Johnson last night, I would have been really happy too, but they clearly had a higher grade on Golden, so they went with Golden. And that very well might happen today on day 2. So let's talk about day 2 really quick. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. I literally did lose my voice last night with all the screaming and hollering. The board has been good to the Packers so far. They're going to have a lot of options today. So we have Will Johnson out there. Obviously, teams are probably concerned about his injuries. So I don't think he's going to be there at 54, but that's another person that's going to get picked before that will push more guys down the board. Ezraku, Mike Green, the Packers aren't going to take them either. That's going to push other edge players down the board. The running backs are going to start coming off the board. We still have Eamon Wari at safety. We have some tight ends like Terrence Ferguson. We have Jason Taylor's kid, Mason Taylor. I think all those guys could go here in round 2. I think that Tyler Shuck, Jalen Milroy, and Shedeur Sanders are going to go. There's a few linemen that could go. So I think the Packers are going to have a really good selection when they pick at 54. Here are some of the round 2 possibilities. If we can even get any of these right, I'll be happy, right? So Trey Amos at cornerback, Savone Ravel at cornerback, Azariah Thomas at cornerback. Sorry, I couldn't read my own writing here. Jayden Higgins, I think, is still a possibility at receiver because of the fact that he's literally a tier 1 for them. TJ Sanders, Darius Alexander, and Alfred Collins at defensive tackle. And then at edge, Landon Jackson, if he falls, my God, that would be a steal in round 2. They still have Jordan Birch, who they brought in for a visit. There's JT Tuimoloau. I really keep butchering his name. And then Nick Scorton, the edge as well. So that group of edges, I think, is really interesting in round 2. I still think the smart thing to do here would be to go defensive tackle and edge and get a corner later. You know, we talked about Bilal Kone, Caleb Bransaw, Noah Williams. I think that that's still the best route to go. For round 3, here's the list of possibilities. We got Anthony Belton at guard, Logan Brown at guard, Jared Wilson at center, Wyatt Millam at guard, Tate Ratledge at guard. And then we have edges Savion Jones from LSU, Kyle Kennard, Elijah Roberts at edge. And then at receiver, I could see them going Jalen Royals, Torrey Horton, potentially. And then at corner, we have Noah Williams, Darian Porter, Jordan Hancock, and then defensive tackle Josh Farmer and CJ West. So those are all the options that I'd be looking for today. Top 3 in round 2, TJ Sanders, the defensive tackle, GT Tuimoloau from Ohio State at edge, and then edge Jordan Birch. Those are the 3 that I think are most likely in round 2. And in round 3, edge Elijah Roberts, defensive tackle Josh Farmer, and Anthony Belton, the offensive guard. My official prediction, round 2 is going to be TJ Sanders, round 3, Anthony Belton. So I will be back tomorrow breaking down round 2 and 3, depending on how schedule allows, because I do work my actual job tomorrow. I might just do a recap of day 2 and 3 on Saturday night. But either way, guys, we're going to break down the rest of the picks. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you're just as happy as I am with Matthew Golden. If you're a little unsure about this, trust me in the fact that this dude's going to be special. So I appreciate you listening, and go Pack Go.